Don't use holy water one more time if you don't know what you're actually doing. Because right now, days before one of the most powerful moments in the entire church calendar, most Catholics are about to let it pass like any other Tuesday, and Padre Pio warned us about exactly this. He used to say that the soul unprepared for grace is like a locked house when the king comes to the door. The king knocks, the king waits, and then he moves on. March 25th is coming, the Annunciation of the Lord, the exact moment when the angel Gabriel stood before a young girl in Nazareth and delivered a message that split history in two. Not a message to a king, not a declaration to an army, a whisper to a hidden, silent, ordinary woman who had to say one word for the salvation of the world to begin. And she said it, "Be it done unto me according to thy word." But here's what almost no one stops to think about. God waited for that word. He didn't force it. He didn't take it. He stood in the doorway of her soul, and he waited. Which means the same God who created the stars and holds every atom together still asks permission before he enters, and that terrifies me because it means he asks you too. Right now, today, in the noise and the routine and the distraction of your week, he's at your door. The question is whether you even hear him knocking. Padre Pio understood something most modern Catholics have forgotten, that the spiritual world is not symbolic. It is not metaphor. It is not a nice idea for Sunday morning. It is the most real thing happening around you right now. There are forces working against your soul every single day, not in some distant theatrical way. Right here, in your house, in your habits, in the quiet moments when you feel that low, heavy weight you can't quite name. And the saints, Padre Pio above all, never let that go unchallenged. He fought. Every day, his whole life he fought. And one of his weapons was something so simple, you've probably already got it somewhere in your home, forgotten on a shelf or dried up in a little bottle by the door. Holy water, not as a superstition, not as a comfort object, as a weapon, when used with faith, with intention, with the full weight of what it actually is. But before I show you the truth that changes everything about how you approach this feast, before I walk you through exactly what Padre Pio taught and why it still matters, right now, before this Annunciation passes like every other one, I need to ask you something. If you've been going through the motions, if holy water has become just a habit, a reflex, something your hand does while your soul stays asleep, write right now in the comments, "Mary, prepare my heart to say yes." By commenting, you break the spiritual indifference that keeps you from hearing God knock. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to feel ready. Mary didn't either, but she was open. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Padre Pio of Pietrelcina was not a gentle, distant figure behind a prayer card. He was a man with wounds in his hands and feet, who bled every day for 50 years, a man who spent hours in the confessional listening to the darkest confessions of the soul, a man who was physically attacked by the devil, thrown from his bed, beaten, left on the floor of his cell, gasping in the dark. He knew what the fight looked like up close. And he didn't talk about spiritual warfare the way most people talk about it today, as a concept, as a category, as something that happens to other people in other places. He talked about it the way a soldier talks about the enemy he has faced in the field, direct, specific, unafraid. One of his spiritual children once asked him, "Father, do you really believe the devil attacks ordinary people, not just mystics and saints?" And Padre Pio looked at her the way you look at someone who has just asked a very dangerous question. And he said he attacks ordinary people most of all, because ordinary people don't believe he exists. That silence after his words must have been heavy, because he was right. and he's still right. The greatest victory the enemy has won in the modern world is not corruption, not violence, not the collapse of the family, though all of that is real. His greatest victory is the shrug, the comfortable disbelief. The Catholic who goes to Mass on Sunday and then lives the rest of the week as if the invisible world doesn't exist. Padre Pio called that spiritual sleep, and he warned that a sleeping soul is an open door. This is where holy water enters, not as decoration, not as tradition, but as a deliberate act of faith against that sleep. The Church teaches clearly, holy water is a sacramental. It does not work automatically, like flipping a switch. It works in proportion to the faith and intention of the one who uses it, which means the same water that drives back darkness for a soul awake in faith does almost nothing for a soul that goes through the motions. Padre Pio was ruthless about this distinction. He blessed his own cell with holy water. He kept it close. He used it before prayer, after prayer, when he felt the weight of spiritual attack pressing in from the edges of the room. His hands shook sometimes, not from weakness, but from the effort of holding ground that the enemy was trying to take back inch by inch. This is not poetry. His biographers documented it. The sounds, the cold, the dark pressure that would descend in the night hours, and Padre Pio reaching for the water, making the sign of the cross deader and holding the line. Now, before I show you the exact gesture he taught and why it's so directly connected to the Annunciation, I want to make sure you already have the weapon in your hands. Because what I'm about to share is not just a spiritual practice. It's a daily decision to remain awake. And the best companion I know for that decision, especially in this season, is something I put together specifically for people who want to go deeper. It's called The Power of the Rosary with Padre Pio, Miracles, Protection, and Divine Graces. Inside, you'll find his actual teachings on prayer, not summaries, not paraphrases. His words, his warnings, his instructions. A 30-day guide for praying with real devotion. Testimonies of miracles connected to his intercession. And specific prayers for protection and healing that you can bring into your home right now. This isn't a book for scholars. It's for the person who feels the weight and wants to know how to fight back. A small investment in your soul. The link is pinned in the comments. Get it before this feast passes, because what comes next, the gesture, the mystery, the theological truth behind it, will land completely differently if your soul is already holding this weapon. March 25th. Most Catholics know the story, the angel, the greeting, the fear, the yes. But here is the part that should stop you cold. The incarnation, God becoming flesh, the hinge point of all human history, could not begin without a human yes. The God who spoke the universe into existence chose to make himself dependent on the free response of one creature. He could have done it differently. He didn't. Think about what that means. The salvation of the entire human race, suspended on the answer of a young woman in a village no one had ever heard of. No army, no throne, no announcement to the powerful, just an angel, a girl, and a silence that lasted long enough to feel like the world was holding its breath, and God waited in that silence. He didn't pressure her, he didn't manufacture her yes. He laid the mystery before her as completely as a human mind could receive it. And then he waited. She asked one question, not from doubt, from the need to understand. How can this be? She was leaning in. Her soul was not asleep. And then she said it. Behold the handmaid of the Lord. Be it done unto me according to thy word. The world exhaled. Now here is the question pressing against your ribs right now, whether you feel it or not. What is God asking of you that you haven't said yes to yet? Not the dramatic thing, the quiet one, the persistent one, the invitation that keeps returning in the middle of prayer, in a conversation you didn't expect, in a gospel line that finds you no matter how many times you've heard it. Padre Pio once told a penitent who came to him shattered by spiritual dryness, "You have not lost God. You have lost attentiveness, and attentiveness is something you have to choose every single morning." That word, attentiveness. Mary had it. Her whole being was oriented toward God, not without fear, not without questions, but oriented, positioned to receive. And because she was positioned, the Word became flesh. What happens when you're not positioned? Grace doesn't disappear. Grace waits, but the enemy doesn't wait with it. He moves into the silence. He fills the spaces that attentiveness would have kept open. Padre Pio saw this in the confessional every single day for decades. Souls where the enemy had settled into rooms that grace had been standing outside of for years. He wept in that confessional. He also fought from it, because he knew one moment of genuine openness, one real, deliberate, embodied yes. That's all it takes to begin turning the whole thing around. And that yes has a physical form. This is the part most people skip, not because they don't care, because it seems too small, too quiet, too ordinary for the size of what they're carrying. But Padre Pio had no patience for that kind of thinking. He used to say, "The devil is not afraid of your grand intentions. He is afraid of your daily faithfulness. One small act, done with full attention every morning, that terrifies him more than a week of beautiful resolutions. And there is nothing daily and faithful about the way most Catholics touch holy water today." Be honest with yourself for a second. The last time your fingers touched that water, were you there? Was your soul engaged, or was your hand moving while your mind was already somewhere else? Already building the to-do list, already dreading the meeting, already scrolling before you even reach the door? That's not a condemnation, it's a diagnosis, and Padre Pio was a doctor of souls, not a judge of them. He taught this clearly. Every sacramental is a point of contact between the visible world and the invisible one. A threshold, a crossing point. But that crossing requires your participation, your faith, your intention, your full presence in the moment. Without those, the water is just water. With them, it is a weapon, a declaration, a daily act of war against the spiritual sleep the enemy needs to do his work in your life. Here is the gesture. Morning, before your phone, before the noise has a chance to colonize your head, you find the holy water, you hold it, you stop moving, not for an hour, for 30 seconds, 30 real seconds of standing still and becoming conscious that God is present in this room, in this moment, watching you wake up. Then, slowly, you touch the water to your forehead. Not a tap, not a reflex, a deliberate opening, as if a door inside your mind is swinging inward. Lord, I want my thoughts to be yours today. I want to see what you see. I want to think the way you think. Then you bring your hand to your chest, to your heart, and you hold it there. Because the heart is where the yes has to come from. Not willpower, not discipline alone. The heart, the most stubborn, most defended, most wounded part of you. The place that still holds the old fears and the old resistances you don't fully understand and have never been able to name out loud. You press the water there, and you say it quietly. Lord, enter where I still resist. Enter where I've been pretending I'm fine. Then you make the sign of the cross, slowly, as if it means something. Because it does. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, you are not waving your hand. You are planting a flag. You are declaring, this morning belongs to God. This soul belongs to God. The enemy has no ground here today. And then Because it is the Annunciation, because Mary's yes is the model for everything that has ever gone right between God and a human soul. You add these words: Lord, just as Mary said yes, I also want to say yes, even where I don't understand, even where I'm afraid. Prepare my heart to receive you. Now let me tell you what that sounds like in a real life. A woman named Teresa went to Padre Pio for spiritual direction in the early 1950s. She was not a mystic. She was not extraordinary. She was a parishioner from San Giovanni Rotondo, wife, mother, ordinary woman, who had been carrying a fear for 3 years that she could not name and could not shake. It lived in her chest, a cold, dense weight just below her sternum. She woke with it every morning. She carried it to bed every night. She had prayed about it, confessed around it, begged God to take it, and it never moved. Padre Pio gave her this gesture, nothing else. No special prayer, no novena, no extraordinary practice. Just the morning holy water, forehead, heart, sign of the cross, the words. She started doing it, not dramatically, not with great emotion, just faithfully, every single morning for 2 weeks. On the 15th morning, she woke up and reached for the heaviness out of habit. The way you reach for something you've carried so long, your body expects it. It was gone, not lighter, gone. She went to Padre Pio. She told him. Her voice was shaking. And he looked at her with that steady, direct look that his spiritual children described as seeing all the way to the floor of a person's soul. And he said, "You didn't lose a fear, Teresa. You opened a door, and grace walked through it. That's it. That's the whole thing. The gesture doesn't fix everything at once. It doesn't perform miracles on demand. But it opens the door. The same door Mary opened in Nazareth, and it puts you in the posture of someone who is ready to receive. And grace, once invited in, never wastes the opening." There is a story that Padre Pio told more than once in his final years. He spoke of a man who came to him for confession, a man who had been away from the church for over 20 years, not angry at God, not rebellious, just gone, slowly, quietly gone, the way a fire goes out not all at once but one ember at a time. He had come to San Giovanni Rotondo not to confess. His wife had dragged him there. He was standing in the back of the church with his arms crossed and his jaw set, certain that nothing would happen, certain that this was a waste of a Tuesday. And then Padre Pio came out. The man said later that the moment Padre Pio passed him in the corridor, didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't look at him, something broke inside his chest. He described it like a wall that had been standing for 20 years, cracking down the middle in 5 seconds. He couldn't explain it. He didn't try to. He got in line for confession. He waited 2 hours. He went in. And when he came out, his wife said his face looked like a different man's face. Padre Pio, when someone asked him about that day, simply said, God had been knocking on that door for 20 years. That man finally stopped blocking it with his arms. That's the whole thing, isn't it? God doesn't stop. He doesn't give up. He doesn't look at your 20 years of distance and decide you're not worth the effort. The knocking doesn't stop. The invitation doesn't expire. But you have to unblock the door. You have to take your arms down. And the gesture, the holy water, the morning, the slow sign of the cross, the words you say with your hand on your chest, that is the act of taking your arms down. That is the physical, visible, embodied decision to stop defending yourself against grace and start receiving it. March 25th is not just a feast day on a calendar. It is an annual reminder that the God of the universe still waits for your yes, still stands at the door of your soul with something to offer that you cannot get anywhere else and cannot produce on your own. His presence, his peace, His power working in your life in the spaces where you have been exhausted and failing and quietly desperate. He knows those spaces. He's been waiting to enter them. The question is the same one that was asked in Nazareth 2,000 years ago, and it is being asked again right now, in this moment, while you're watching this video. Will you open? Not perfectly, not with every answer, not with every fear resolved and every wound healed. Mary opened imperfectly, with fear and questions and a heart that had never faced anything like this before. And God worked with that. He will work with yours. So this is the invitation, not from me, but from the feast itself, from the tradition Padre Pio lived and bled and fought for. Tomorrow morning, before the noise starts, before the world gets in. Touch your forehead, touch your heart, make the sign of the cross slowly as if it means something, because it does, and say it, out loud if you can, in the quiet of your room before anyone else is awake. Lord, just as Mary said yes, I also want to say yes, even where I don't understand, even where I'm afraid. Prepare my heart to receive you. Say it like you mean it, because the moment you mean it, He walks through. May Padre Pio intercede for you, for that specific thing you haven't been able to give over, for that specific door you've been blocking without realizing it. May Our Lady of the Annunciation teach you what she knew better than anyone who ever lived. That saying yes to God, even in the dark, even without the full picture, is the only move that ever made the world more beautiful. Don't let this feast pass like any other Tuesday. Your yes is waiting.